Shadowrun Hong Kong feels like I'm the ball in the pinball machine. And no, that's not entirely a negative analogy. There's a lot within the walls of this game, and a lot to do and see, and this CRPG may get you lost in its world in more ways than one, as you get thrown around from bumper to bumper of missions and storylines. But the ultimate question still remains when all is said and done. Is the next iteration in the Shadowrun series worth the price of a mission at $19.99? I'll attempt to answer this in this review, but you should note this review was done with a key obtained from the developer Harebrained Schemes. One of the early challenges that this game presents is the amount of different content and mechanics under its surface, but let's start at the beginning of the game. To begin your campaign, you can customize your character with 6 preset classes, from Decker to Adept. Let's put this to rest right now, however. You should probably choose the 7th option, where you can set every stat specifically, because this is one of the first in many choices in the game that will have a heavy impact on how you play. One of the first things to note about the stat system, however, is something that the game reminds you often in its loading menus. A jack of all trades is a master of none. In the game, when you complete specific missions, you earn karma, which can be used to spend on skills in incrementing costs. And the amount that you'll earn, just like everything else in this game, will be enough to get you what you need, but not what you want. I'd play the song to make the point, but you know, copyright strikes. That's a common theme of this game with pretty much everything, from your money to the slots in your bag. You have limited everything, and so you'll have to make a lot of hard decisions. Do you put another point into your rifles to get the most out of your sniper rifle? That's less points, however, to put into your magic abilities, or your ability to summon spirits, or less points you can put into your cybernetic augmentations. There's a lot of customization here, and when I mean a lot, I mean a lot. Those who don't like customization and choice run far, far away from this game, because this game is not for you. And that's one of the first double-edged swords that the game will present for some people. Yes, even before the game actually starts. One of the first things you need to know is that how your class and stat choices makes a huge difference in how you play. Now, I played as a Decker, which I actually ended up finding out I really didn't want to. But hey, for the sake of a timely review, I played through it. With the game holding back your upgrades like a pen and paper RPG would, you really do feel like every decision is important that you make, and it has a specific outcome in what happens to you and your team. On the flip side, however, it may take you a bit of time to truly understand how you want to play this game, and you may want to start over once or twice before you really start feeling confident in how you're going to play the game. I like the challenge that the game presented, however, and found it to be refreshing compared to other games that give you a bit too many stat points and make you a super beast by the end of the game. Once you get past that initial hurdle of deciding how you play the game, your choices will feel fulfilling. But to say the game has a learning curve, unless you're familiar with the genre, would be putting it mildly. It doesn't do a good job of introducing a player new to the genre to its mechanics, and they will feel lost. Very, very lost. So now that you've got your character selected, we can begin the actual story. You and Duncan are orphans, who were taken in by a man called Raymond Black. And after a while later, after you've left the orphanage, he has sent both of you a message wanting to meet you. He sounds a little bit panicked. From there, things get a tiny bit hairy, as you run into Gobbet and Isabel while attempting to meet up with Raymond. And what happens next does not bode well for any of you. People die, and well, you're sort of pinned responsible for it. Whoops. This forces you into the world of Shadowrunners. Basically, you are the mafia men of this cyberpunk world. And well, you've now got to do missions and earn some favors to help get to your foster father and find out what is exactly going on in the city of Hong Kong and how your life has been shaped by those around you. In terms of the story, you've got a lot of elements here and a lot of text to go through. Those who love to read will find that Shadowrun has a lot to say and a lot of stories to tell. The stories that are created here are reasonably intriguing, even for someone who doesn't have a lot of background in the Shadowrun world. It's really due to the mashup of the cyberpunk and magic worlds in which the game's story shines. For example, it's weird to see you attempt to take care of a film producer with ties to a mysterious benefactor who got him healthy somehow, in a full-on mashup of fantasy and soap opera elements. It fuses old and new together in a variety of ways, and a good amount of the time it works. Which brings us to the inconsistency of the game and its storytelling. Look, there's good writing here, and stories to discover for sure, like finding out about a doctor who's filled with cybernetic implants, and how he came to the city of Hong Kong after what happened to his former crew. Those type of characters, even if they're side characters, will make you want to find out more about them and exactly who they are. But it's then contrasted with story missions that can feel empty, where the plot feels generic and not enough detail is added to really want to know what happens next. The story elements of Hong Kong are very hit and miss, but I admit when they hit pretty hard. It's just that when they miss pretty hard as well. As for some characters, you'll be able to recruit a few optional characters in a ghoul samurai and a drone operator who is a little bit quirky, and all the playable characters have at least something unique that makes them stand out in terms of personality and their backstories, well, for the most part. Sure, they aren't the greatest written characters in the world, and some of their elements could have been taken to another level with a little bit more depth, but I cared enough about each of the characters in question to want to learn more about them and do their specific missions. I will say in my eyes, the two optional characters, however, shine a lot over the main four characters in terms of personality, at least in my eyes. I do like how the story can reasonably change with the right characters, and in particular, the reactions that certain NPCs will have to specific characters, such as your ghoul. They always come up at the right time, like the ghoul at higher class and corporate locations, and really help in selling the uniqueness of your squad mates. But weirdly enough, there feels like there's a lack of playable characters here. In particular, one thing regarding side characters came through. I didn't like the fact that there was no mage to get, unless if you literally paid for it on a mission. And as I mentioned before, money is scarce, so spending it on a side character that will only be there for one mission, probably not a good idea. I don't know if I missed a side character I could actually get. Honestly, I spent a lot of time looking too. But that was a real shame considering, and I'm really unsure why this decision was made. This unfortunately becomes a slight pattern in the overall game, as it feels like despite all the content that the game has, that the elements within it at times fall short, like there is more detail needed. That's really hard to say considering the content present here, but it feels like there were too much taken on at times here, and it hurt the game overall. Now let's talk a little bit about the art direction here. You've got an isometric view most of the time, and the details in terms of the environment isn't the greatest, but works for the setting in question. In particular, the enclosed environments with lots of lighting or select lighting works the best. The game captured the dark nature of the streets in which the Shadowrunners work on, although it can be a little hard on the eyes when all is said and done. You will get a variety of environments to go through, and they fit the locations in which the game is attempting to go for in each mission. In terms of the overworld, the fog of war makes sense in a battle situation, but it's really annoying when it was brought over to the town in the overworld. If I'm not in combat, please don't bother with it. It's more annoying more than anything else, even if it makes sense aesthetically. I don't remember where everyone is all the time. I don't remember where specific vendors are, because I probably don't have the cybernetic enhancements in order to remember those things. The strongest art element of the game is the hand-drawn pictures of the characters' faces. It adds a human element to the game that just a character model wouldn't have gotten. A lot of detail was put into the characters in terms of features on their faces, as well as the uniqueness of each orc, troll, and human who makes up this world. It makes them stand out from the rest. But let's finally dig into the gameplay here, because there's a lot to cover. Now this is a CRPG, and thus you've got a lot of ways to deal with the elements around you. You'll go on a variety of missions that your handler will send you on, and basically you have a lot of freedom to explore the world in how you want. You'll go on missions such as finding out what has been happening to a set of elders that have been going missing one by one, to disrupting chi. I'm gonna say chi because it just sounds like chi even though it's ki. As in many pen and paper RPGs, how you go about your mission is completely up to you at times, because it's not all about combat. You can talk, threaten, or trick people into doing what you need to do to succeed. There's multiple paths and multiple endings to missions, usually coming down to letting people live or die a good amount of the time. For some, the bloodlust must be fed. I do like the fact that the skill checks on stats and your personality trait, such as academic or Shadowrunner, can get you out of certain situations, and gives you reasons to diversify a tiny bit to get out of basic checks, but also gives you reasons to focus points into specific skills otherwise. Being able to talk yourself out of a fight or two can really take the stress off your health packs and your team, but it doesn't feel absolutely necessary either. There's a bunch you can do outside of battle, and in fact, you may be able to get through a good chunk of the missions without lifting a finger to fight. You'll have to fight eventually, of course, there's no way around that, but I was legitimately surprised with how many ways I talked my way to my mission goal. Certain skills can give you a leg up on your opponent as well, if you find them in the environment, like hacking into a mainframe and attempting to get camera footage of someone you're about to meet. There's a lot of reasons to do significant legwork in missions, which I received rather well, as you feel like you're really making an impact on what you're about to do. As one of those side options of what to do in and out of battle, decking has been revamped this time around in the Shadowrun universe, as it acts like a combo between hacking, tactical combat, and stealth. You can run around in a Matrix-like environment and attempt to not be detected by the programs within the environment. If you get detected, the system will start a trace on you. If the trace finishes, the big guns come after you, and while you may be able to fight them off for a little bit, they will do a significant amount of damage while doing it. I will say that while stealth players may like this element, I found it to slow down the game a little bit too much, and frankly, made me a little bit irritated that the skills that I chose focused on this stealth element. I'm not a stealth player. Now, of course, like a lot of elements in this game, it gave me options to just focus on combat while in this decking universe, but I felt like that wasn't the point to the skill to begin with. But now that I've mentioned it, let's talk about the combat. And once again, you have a lot of options in combat, and there's a lot of mechanics in combat to talk about and to understand, and I mean a lot. One of the things you'll realize very quickly is that even if you have what seems to be a finite set of skills, a lot of them are very specific to a situation and can be combined in a variety of ways to deal with specific enemy types. Me attempting to show you everything in a video would make this video longer than the denial, so I'll try to be generic as much as I can here. Your main attacks revolve around your weaponry, which range from pistols, to swords, to sniper rifles, to magic. Drones and spirits are useful allies that you can summon into battle too, mostly because they can take the hits for you more often than not. Controlling them costs your action points, but gives you more options in battle, and action points are the number of times you can go before you end your turn for each character. Those who have played XCOM Enemy Unknown will feel at home here, because there's a lot of similarities on the surface to that game. Characters are very specialized in terms of their roles that you can give them, and characters can focus on buffing others or being tanks and damage magnets. Positioning and the use of cover is vitally important in the game to expose weakness and do extra damage. There are 4 levels of cover ranging from none to light to heavy. This not only affects the hit percentage, but it affects how much damage you take under those covers, and it can even affect AoE spells and weapons. And flanking is a viable tactic in this game, as getting a hit on someone's back can do critical damage in some situations. This can be exploited at times, however, if you really try going back and forth between your controlled characters. As one hits the enemy in the back, the enemy turns around, then your partner on the other side hits him in the back again, and they turn around again. It's sort of like a ping-pong back and forth kind of situation. Characters can have also multiple layers of armor that have to be chewed through before dealing major damage, but certain skills and weaponry, like shotguns for example, are designed to deal with that. Again, have I mentioned the options being the strength of this game? Because I think I have, but I'll mention it again. The amount of options that you have in this game, they are enormous. Even with all the options in combat in the most part felt easier than I think I was expecting it to. Now note, my character put a lot of points into sniper rifles and quickness, and I played on the normal difficulty. But while I did have one wipe at one point early in the game, I never really got a hardcore challenge out of the game. Maybe I would have gotten it on the higher difficulty, but it was the first time I had played this Shadowrun game, so I felt like I needed to play on normal. Sure, I had a character or two go down at times, but honestly the game felt like it was easier as the game progressed. As I got more character upgrades and a better understanding of what the game had to offer, it didn't feel like the difficulty curve sort of matched that. The enemy does provide some challenge here, but there are times I wondered what it was attempting to do. It felt really inconsistent, as at one moment they'd drop a stun grenade in the perfect spot to really screw up my next turn. But then they would follow up with not focusing on a character who was isolated and weak. I don't expect the greatest AI here, but like a lot of what I've said up to this point, when the game didn't shine, it stood out in a bad way. I will say that the game did a good job of variety in terms of switching things up on me, in introducing things like alarms that would bring reinforcements, for example, and have me focus on them, but it never overused them. Every battle felt like a skirmish that was reasonably fresh, that I really had to think about what was presented in front of me, and while the same tactics were applied a lot of the time, the variety of enemies that were thrown at me made things interesting most of the time. The complexity of enemies and the tactics that could be employed are complemented by the different environments that you fought in. In fact, it's probably one of the strongest elements of the game in terms of design. Every fighting arena felt unique and made you adapt to it. From the outside pier to a restaurant to the outdoor picnic-like space, it really felt like they did a very good job in terms of putting the battle elements into those environments while making them seem fresh every single time. Now, the combat is probably one of the strongest elements of the game in terms of the tactics options and the things that you have to do in order to survive, but I do want to say something about hit percentages here. I've gone out of my way to talk to others about this game, and there seems to be some agreement at the core here. The hit percentages that are presented seem to mean jack shit at times. In fact, I found that just going off of instinct in terms of does it make sense that he could make that shot was more effective 90% of the time than the percentages listed, because God knows how many times I missed 80%, 90% shots repeatedly in a row. It got to the point of mind-boggling on how it was calculating it. I'm legitimately wondering if the percentage on the screen was truly representative of my real chances, because frankly it didn't feel like it. It felt like a bug. And once again, I have to go back to a lack of polish here, because one of the things that really bothered me was the bugs. Now look, it's a couple of weeks after the release of this, and it's a part of the reason why I sort of stood off in terms of doing this review. I did face significant bugs during my playthrough, and I'm not talking small ones. I'm talking ones that forced mission restarts. In particular, I faced a nasty bug where a keycard that was needed for the mission was never given to me by a team, which I ran into during the mission, which had me running around going, where the hell is the keycard? In addition, there are misspellings in some of the story elements of the game, and generally, there's some polish issues around the game overall. Be aware to save often, and understand that you may have to do sections again. Even 2 weeks afterward, I'm still seeing some problems. When all was said and done, I enjoyed my time with Shadowrun Hong Kong, but it didn't come without frustration and problems. The bugs that showed up really brought down the experience in the end, and the incomplete nature of some of the elements, in particular the characters, didn't help things. But the combat complexity mixed in with the interesting narratives that the game played with carried it, and the options that you have will allow for replayability, as it seems that there is Steam Workshop support in there in the future, and possible custom campaign capabilities. But as of right now, Hong Kong's hit-and-miss nature lands a 6.5 out of 10 when all is said and done. Those who love lore and reading, and those who like making an experience their own, will really enjoy the elements to this game, as you are in control of your own destiny. But if you don't like games that don't hold your hand, or games that tell rather than show, then this game is a must-avoid for you. I'll say for the price that it did the job, but take everything I said into consideration when making a purchasing decision. Once again, this is Dragnix signing out, and I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did find it helpful, I will put links to the Metacritic as well as the Steam review in the description below. And I would love feedback on whether or not you liked the content of this review and if you think I missed anything. Of course, I'm willing to answer questions so that people can make a more informed purchasing decision. There's a lot of games out there, and while there are a lot of good ones, they don't necessarily match everyone. Once again, like, comment, and subscribe, and all that jazz, and I will see you all later. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left-hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left-hand side as well. And if you missed my last video, take a look at the right-hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.